Alright, we are back with part 3, trilogy of episodes, because there was 3 events that happened this weekend, all with such amazing content to discuss.
Agreed. And we're talking now about NXT. Worlds collide.
Worlds collide, and, just real quickly, I should have had this, in my notes, should have had it prepared, but we're doing it on the fly real quick, sir. I wanted to check, when exactly was the last time you and I covered NXT?
NXT.
It has definitely been some time since you and I have covered NXT.
Yeah, let's see.
I'm checking the playlist as we speak that I have.
I don't think we've covered an NXT 2.0 event. Or maybe we have, like War Games. It was the old guard versus the new guard in December.
That is exactly, That was the final event we covered. NXT War Games 2021. And
that's funny. We went out with the old guard. We were with Ciampa and Gargano and LA Knight.
Yeah.
We were also beaten.
Yeah, that was our final sort of closing moment with NXT. And though there was a couple of interesting matches on certain cards, I don't think it's too bold to say it just kind of wasn't for us a lot of what was happening on those different shows. I still tuned in to a couple of them, like I watched Stand and Deliver to see a couple of those matches, but nothing was like too intriguing to me. They had I think it was In Your House that like I tuned in for like the first couple of matches, and then when I saw the outcome of one of the matches, I just turned it off from there. I was like, this isn't for me. It almost felt like a chore at that point,
And for me, all of their special events like Great American Bash or In Your House, they're all happening on Tuesdays, right? These guys aren't putting on the big stadium weekend shows anymore. The developmental brand are like building their little stories to events that happen midweek, which I always find it hard to watch and do, or follow.
Yeah, especially because, one, if you don't have cable, but two, also, they don't show it at, like, our time, The reason I watch AEW for the most part every Wednesday is because they're showing it 5 o'clock here rather than, when it finishes airing on the East Coast and then it starts showing here, like, on delay, essentially.
And those guys are dead bad with spoilers. Like, right after the segment, during the commercial break, somebody's like, post.
Yeah.
Ugh. And Instagram's obnoxious about, hey, you like this stuff, don't you? You're like, get that out of my face, Instagram.
Yeah, you're trying to see the stuff you want to see and avoid the spoilers. Instagram's like, no, we won't show you the stuff you're following or want to see, but we'll show you all this other stuff that essentially spoils what you're trying to avoid.
Trip out on this, Jack. It was, one of the matches is going to be the Women's Championship unification match. The NXT UK Championship and the NXT Championship being fought between 3 women. And in that build-up, right, because throughout the night we get little video packages for each participant, I am reminded, Jack, that Mandy Rose has been champion for over 300 days, but less than 365. Jack, it has been less than a year since she won that title the first time. It's been less than a year since that, like, renaissance of her career in NXT 2.0.
Yeah, and I think...
That's weird!
Yeah, and I think next week, I believe I saw, like, the announcement from, like, yesterday. It's next week is the 1-year anniversary of NXT 2.0.
That's weird. I feel like it's been a lot longer than that. Braun Breaker is another one that, like, burst into the scene this time last year.
Yeah, I'll never forget watching that debut episode because there actually used to be a channel on Twitch that would live stream NXT.
Really? They got busted?
Yeah, it got busted eventually, but I tuned into them because I was like, hey, let's just see what this 2.0 biz is about. And I just remember seeing them opening up with LA Knight cutting a promo backstage, being interrupted by Braun Breaker. And I'm just kind of a little bit glad in the development he's had because I just remember watching that first episode and being like, why is he so awkward? Like, he came on so, like, happy-go-lucky, and I was like, that's a bit awkward. That doesn't seem, like, fit for his character.
Mandy Rose, too, like, to see her enter the arena in this event versus like that like shock appearance a year ago where it's like, look, it's Raw's Mandy Rose. What's she doing here? Like, she's wearing less makeup. She's wearing, you know what I mean? Something that, like, she's probably wearing, like, I don't think they changed her clothes from, like, the just day to day. She looked so plain looking and it was so awkward. Look at her now.
Yeah.
Goodness.
But, starting off the show, I brought up in the last episode towards the end, I was like, hey, sir, it's coming up in the coming months, our end of the year top 10 list for matches of the year. Do you have any qualifiers on Clash at the Castle? Well, I may have one right here with the very opening contest of Worlds Collide.
I thoroughly enjoyed this opener, Jack. It is between NXT North American Champion Carmelo Hayes, flanked by, what's his name?
Trick Williams.
Yeah. And he's only going to take on Ricochet from SmackDown.
Former NXT North American Champion as well.
In the vein of the recent, like, NXT cameos of not doing anything else, like Apollo Crews and Natalya, we get Ricochet showing up saying, hey, how about we have ourselves a Match of the Year candidate? Why don't you say?
Yeah, he shows up. They obviously, Carmelo has said himself how he wanted this match, and they're like, hey, he's not doing anything at Worlds Collide. Let's have him on the show against Ricochet.
What'd you think? Well, I think what you think of the match is pretty transparent, Jack. Let's say, though, in the entrances, Carmelo Hayes has got this great visual of all these jerseys being hung on the digital screens of all the men he's beat. Gargano and Pete Dunne and what's his name, Walker, and they got a new one ready to go up, and it's got Ricochet's name and his logo on it.
Yeah, and I think the funniest thing was also just, the one thing I love is Carmelo Hayes' social media presence in a way. Like, he knows how to play it up, his character on social media. So, when the feud with Ricochet started, I don't know if you've ever seen that clip where Ricochet was on Instagram Live and someone asked him, why is he bald? And he got like super defensive about it. And like, it's just become a meme within the wrestling community. So when Ricochet showed up to challenge him, the first thing Carmelo Hayes tweets goes, why is he bald? And not only that, I forgot to mention, I can mention it now since Carmelo Hayes is brought up. When Solo Sikoa made his debut, while he was down in NXT, he always kept talking about how he wanted next, as in to challenge next for the North American title. And I don't think he ever got his one-on-one match. So when he made his main roster debut, Carmelo Hayes immediately was like, he couldn't get his match, so he moved up to the main roster.
Dang. That's a pretty fire game of social media.
Yeah, but the match itself, I went into it knowing what to expect from these two men stylistically, and man, was I just blown away with how much chemistry the two of them had. Like, you would expect, maybe because of Ricochet being more experienced, but also the two never locking up, they'd have to feel each other out first. Nope, they were just going straight into it, putting on a full display of both their athleticism.
I always am amused by this, right? But Ricochet, like, comes in as the older one of the two, right? And, like, if anyone's going to slow the match down, it's him. And I'm always amused by that. Because he was a guy that, people were trying to slow down 3 or 4 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Now he's the one putting on headlocks, and he's the one, holding Carmelo Hayes at bay.
Yeah,
which I thought was really good.
Yeah, the clip between the two men where, they're running the ropes against each other, and Ricochet goes for like that backflip when he bounces off the ropes, and he backflips, and as soon as he lands, he's caught by, I want to say a cutter, but also more so like a flying forearm or uppercut from Hayes bouncing off the ropes. I showed that to Dom, and I love the way he described it. He said, absolute fluidity.
Ooh, yes. You can call this match absolute fluidity.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and,
there's like the Ricochet Will Ospreay like bit at the beginning where they're like sweep the leg, jump, takedown, pop up, the pin, sneak out, like that bit, right? Where like it ends with the Superman pose. That part's done to death. What I like is the part where they keep pulling each other off the corner because I'm going to hit the big move. No, I'm going to hit the big move. That part I love. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. No, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and the one thing I also liked a lot was, if you want to say, I liked how they kind of limited themselves on the interference from Trick Williams. Like, he was there for a part or two, but he didn't, he wasn't obnoxious with the interference, if you want to say.
Well, try to tell that to Ricochet. He was fed up with him.
Yeah, he definitely was.
Yep. Knocked him out, knocked him down outside, kicked him from the ring apron towards the end. His presence was just felt enough, for you to think, like, if Ricochet loses this, it wasn't his fault entirely.
Yeah, and, it's funny, all these high-flying moves, all this, athleticism being displayed. And the finish is pretty much simple. It's not something to be too mad about because it still plays on the factor of, there could be a potential rematch down the line, perhaps, because Ricochet's not doing anything much right now. They ended in a pretty classic roll-up, where Hayes rolls up Ricochet for the win. But he does it, with, I believe it was with the assistance of Trick Williams' distraction, and it's just enough to, he also does it smoothly in a way where it's he gets away with it, he catches Ricochet off guard, and you're kind of, again, like how you mentioned, you're so used to Ricochet being the one whose offense catches people off guard.
Yeah, and here he is, being shown up by the younger guy, right? Goodness gracious. I wasn't disappointed or bothered by the roll-up finish.
Yeah, definitely enjoyed this moment. Then we get the Fatal 4-Way Elimination match. I actually didn't know it was an elimination, but I'm a bit more happy, or I was a bit happy to hear that it was elimination because, it just made it easier for all the competitors involved so that things wouldn't get too crowded. We get
I agree.
The unification of the NXT and NXT UK Tag Team Championships.
Jack, because you and I both said we're not, following NXT very closely, but did you know that Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen were the UK Tag Team Champions?
I did not know.
I wish I had been following because that seemed like a really funny story that the most American of American bros were holding the UK version of the NXT Championship somehow.
Yeah, and it's funny because then you have one of the UK teams, Pretty Deadly. They've been on NXT 2.0 for a while, so they're not technically representative of the NXT UK brand, despite being, basically of UK descent, probably.
I believe so. Elton Prince and I don't know the other guy's name. I know the Elton Prince is because of how incredible the name is.
Yeah, but it definitely it's the NXT champions are the Creed brothers, as you mentioned. Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen are the NXT UK tag team, and we have Pretty Deadly and NXT UK tag team Gallus in this match.
Yep.
And I don't know if I really don't know what people were expecting in this match, but Briggs and Jensen are the first one out.
They are. They definitely had a good showing. I can't think of any particular moves, but I definitely think they got some hits in.
Yeah,
it's really an aggressive match. And I think it should be said before we go further that Roderick Strong was found beaten up in the parking lot before this match. It's why we don't see him at ringside with the Diamond Mine. Instead, they are flanked by Damien, what's his name?
Damon Kemp.
Correct. So, Briggs and Brooks out, down to 3.
Yeah, and then eventually Gallus gets eliminated, and they start kind of getting real angry and cross about getting eliminated.
Because they're Irish, you see. I was real upset at that point, Jack. I thought Gallus was going to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised too, especially because I was like, I don't know, they introduced them with such like dominance, if you want to say.
Yeah,
it's kind of
what
hard
I say. When I talked about Bayley and her group in episode 1 of this trio of episodes, this is a perfect example of, hey, check out this new group. They're big, they're bad, they lost.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I think it was also a bit more upsetting because we get something that we've kind of seen before. We get Pretty Deadly against the Creed brothers, and if we remember correctly, that's how Pretty Deadly debuted, facing off against the Creed brothers. You know,
it's
and
funny that you say that it's something that we've seen before. I know it's something that's been on NXT TV before, but I've never seen it. So new to me. And Jack, it's been a long old time since a couple of male wrestling performers have made me feel uncomfortable the way Pretty Deadly have with what they wear in the ring.
Yeah, their outfits are definitely very confusing, to say the least. I'm not one to comment on people's style, but maybe I don't know. I think that just kind of shows how far out the loop I am on fashion nowadays.
I mean, fashion be gosh darn, with between the hair and the general texture and color of what they're wearing, and shape and size, goodness, just from some angles, am I looking at a fella or ain't I?
But then, we get these two going at it, and then we get Damon Kemp turning on the Creed brothers. He turns on the Creed brothers, costs them the match, and also to mention, Gallus and Brooks and Jensen started brawling on the outside to distract the ref for a moment like this to happen.
Oh, and I think you brought up, Jack, how much you liked the Claymore into the ref bump you liked in the Clash at the Castle main event, right? Like that. Like, it wasn't just a ref bump for a ref bump's sake. It was like a literal accident. We saw the ref have to slide out of the ring because those two are the pin was happening so close to the ropes. He's standing outside and counting on the apron. And then the Gallus fight breaks out at ringside and knocks him out. It's only because the ref had to count outside that he's caught in that brawl, and I really like that.
Yeah. And, then, Pretty Deadly wins, and they hold both the tag titles.
They certainly do.
Definitely, it's a bit odd. I'm interested to see where exactly this whole story goes, even though I won't really be keeping up with it as much.
Nah. But I'll tell you what, Pretty Deadly had some pretty incredible tag team moves.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned earlier, we move on to the triple threat to unify both the women's titles. Mandy Rose, NXT Women's Champion, Miko Satomura, NXT UK Champion, and Blair Davenport, NXT UK participant, now moving over to NXT 2.0. What were your thoughts on this match, sir, and sort of the build-up to it all?
I've never seen a Mako Satomura match, so I was excited to see, whatever this was going to amount to be. She gets the big O entrance with all the streamers. And I definitely kind of looked and said, well, I know who's getting pinned in this affair, right?
Yeah, that's definitely how a ton of people felt, for sure. And, it was a pretty decent match, of course. I like how they brought up, I can't remember if it was on the pre-show, the promo package, where they brought it up. But they brought up the fact that, basically how young Satomura started in this business. And they even showed, that she wrestled on Nitro and all that, that's how old she is and stuff. And, it was a pretty decent match between all three women. People obviously knew who was taking the pin, as you mentioned, And this one, a lot of people were kind of upset with the fact that Satomura lost and, Mandy getting both titles. But the interesting thing to bring up, or to remember, is though they weren't released, it still wasn't guaranteed that the wrestlers who stayed under contract want to move or make the move to the U.S. and U.S.-based brand, you know?
Yeah, so you're saying, Satomura lost. How could this be? Besides the athletic prowess that is Mandy Rose, this also could be the byproduct of Meiko Satomura sticking around for a short while. She isn't here for the long haul.
Yeah. That's something that definitely a lot of people had to think in mind, which was also kind of something I saw people bring up about Gallus, but, with the post-match antics, it seems like they're going to be here for a while,
Agreed. I was impressed with what happened, right? I think this is one of the definitely tighter fought matches, women's matches that I've seen in a while. Because, people like to say that Toni Storm's a really great wrestler. And I don't know, I just think she moves a little slow for my taste. This one was a fast moving, hard hitting match. Meiko hits a pretty devastating kick at the end. They called it a certain move, and I'm like, oh, that must be her finisher. I know so little about her. I think she hit her finisher. And she can't capitalize on it, though, because Mandy Rose hits her running knee and hits them both. It knocks Meiko out of the ring. I think she has a claim at the title still. I think she can come back at Mandy and say, I demand a rematch. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely going to be interested to see where they go from all of this. We get, after the fact, we get the NXT women's tag titles. We see champions, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, if I remember correctly, yes, versus Doudrop and Nikki ASH taking, how would you say it, kind of taking a break from the main roster to show up real quick in NXT.
And weren't they in the main roster's women's tag team tournament?
Mm-hmm.
So interesting that they show up here. They still want the gold, Jack. And goodness gracious, looking at them and looking at Kaden Carter and Katana, I thought, whoa, they could win here. They could certainly win here.
Yeah. And an interesting thing to note is, though she was a participant on NXT UK, Doudrop never participated in NXT or NXT 2.0.
That is interesting. You lose sight of that fact.
Yeah. But we also get a bit of an odd moment, or I don't know how to really explain it. I just think it's kind of odd. We see Toxic Attraction show up, but they cost Doudrop and Nikki the titles, even though they're both technically heel tag teams.
If I were to play devil's advocate again, if you're Toxic Attraction, Jack, and you want the NXT titles back, who would you rather take them off?
True.
The party gals or the tough Scottish lasses?
True, very true.
Yeah, I was surprised by their appearance as well. And goodness, it was enough to put away the challengers.
Yeah, they retain, and it gets them a good defense against a notable tag team, especially one coming down from the main roster.
There's a tiny, tiny thing I'm really excited about. So, Katana, last name, hits her big top rope splash on Doudrop. I would have changed the order of participants a little bit. I thought that was, asking a bit much of us, the audience, to say that Katana is going to jump on Doudrop and pin her. But what I want to shout out was JC Jane on the ringside apron, crouched down so the ref can't see her, right? Nikki's going to try to break the pin, but she clasps Nikki's leg so that she can't enter the ring. It was so perfect.
Yeah, really, really good, booking towards the end to, kind of push that feud forward, especially because I think they had a match yesterday. I can't remember for sure. Definitely going to be interesting to see.
We did not follow up.
Yeah. But then we get to our main event, the two world titles being unified. We have NXT champion Braun Breaker defending against NXT UK champion Tyler Bate.
Just like I had said before, that it's funny to see Ricochet come back and be the old hat, the veteran. Here we are, Jack, in 2022. Bronson Breaker a year into his time in NXT 2.0, and he's going up against The grizzled vet himself, Tyler Bate, who is, guess what, Jack? 26 years old.
Yeah, that's definitely a veteran's age.
You know, but it's like, he's 2 years older than Breakker.
Yeah, and you know, for a lot of people, it's been a long time since they've seen Tyler Bate. And I think the funniest thing was the build-up to this match was Tyler Bate showing up as NXT UK champion. Despite in that very same week, they were going to begin airing the episodes that showed the crowning of a new NXT UK champion through a tournament.
I know what you mean. A little awkward, but we got there.
Yeah, so it was just funny, but what'd you think of the match, sir?
I missed a lot of this one. I'm watching it late. I was falling in and out of sleep. I know how it ends, but I also wanted to shout out how much is on Tyler Bate's shoulders, because he's not just fighting a championship match. He's fighting for UK wrestling. And how funny and interesting, Jack, that his title has only had 4 title holders in its history.
Yeah. And the other funny thing is, if you look at both nights, not a lot of UK people have been winning.
Oh, no. It's true.
Sheamus lost. Drew McIntyre lost. All the NXT UK members so far up until this point have lost.
And you don't like Tyler Bate's chances, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Dang.
But so, you know, it's all on his shoulders, as you mentioned. Is he able to pull it off, sir?
Yep. That was a yep to affirm I heard you. I'm afraid to say no.
Yeah, no. He gets, hit. Or I actually kind of forget what was the ending of this match.
I'll tell you right now. Let's see. It was an ill-fated ricochet off the top ropes. Landed somebody receiving on the receiving end of a spear from Breakker. So Breakker hits a spear, wins both belts.
Yeah. So he wins. Basically, NXT UK got swept, if you want to talk about it. Even though, it's funny, people were like, well, no, they technically got one win because of Pretty Deadly. But as I mentioned, they've been more situated on the US brand so far.
Complete with new manager in, what's her name?
Lash Legend.
Yeah. So they, I think they're here to stay, permanently moved to Orlando.
Yeah. But overall, what were your thoughts of the event, sir?
I think maybe because of familiarity of all the participants involved, I probably prefer to Clash over this one. But this one was such an enjoyable show from start to finish. Even that tag match, with Toxic Attractions run in, I'm like, I don't know, it's so charming, You hate to see NXT UK fold as it has, but the action was good. The stories made sense. And again, a funny bite-sized friend you can have before bed.
Yeah, very short, very digestible. And overall, great event, sees the closeout of NXT UK.
What was your match of the night?
Definitely Ricochet and Carmelo Hayes for me.
I agree. And then, which do you think was better, Clash or Worlds Collide?
I think I'd still give the edge to Clash at the Castle.
I think I would as well.
Yeah, just a little bit, And then, with about 16 minutes left, we move on to the final event of the week that we won't cover in full detail, as neither of you and I have seen essentially the event in its entirety, but we caught the matches we wanted to, the highlights we wanted to. AEW All Out 2022. An event with, a lot behind it, as we mentioned, There was a lot of, if you want to call it displeasure with the build-up to it, a lot of confusion, a lot of odd booking, a lot of, there was a lot of matches that had storylines going into it, but kind of failed to capitalize on it. I just kind of want to get this out there. Jade and Athena have been feuding since Double or Nothing happened, and that's how long this feud has been going on. And I get it, I was really upset to see Chris Statlander get injured, and it was likely her going to beat Jade, and it was probably going to be like a triple threat at All Out. But she gets injured, and that almost derails the entire thing, because until like the last 2 weeks or so, that's when they finally get back on TV to continue building towards this match that the feud started all the way back in May.
Goodness. Yeah. I get the sense that things like Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs, Jungle Boy versus Christian have also been like ongoing all summer, and we've just been waiting for a pay-per-view to blow these things off. Yeah. You know? Goodness gracious.
House of Black started their feud with Miro technically at Forbidden Door, you know.
Yep, in June.
Yeah, and we're barely getting it here, and you know, to the displeasure of a lot of people, prolonging that feud meant House of Black having to lose in the first round of the Trios tournament. You know, very confusing booking.
And then how about, Jack, the main event? Jon Moxley versus CM Punk for the AEW World Championship for the first time ever. Oh, wait, they fought last week in a squash match. And you're like, what am I supposed to feel? How am I supposed to be excited 7 days after that happened?
Yeah, there was just, and not only that, but like how I mentioned, it's just, how am I supposed to be so excited? I know the wrestling's going to be good, but 15 matches when you include the pre-show, Did
you see the pre-show?
I watched one match, or no, I watched 2 matches from the pre-show.
Jack won't say nothing about the pre-show. I won't watch that pre-show on YouTube. I want to see Eddie Kingston versus Tomohiro Ishii. I want to see Pac versus Kip Sabian.
Yeah, those were the 2 matches I watched. Those were the 2 ones I watched. And then off the main card, the ones that I watched, I mentioned to you, I watched the finale of the Trios tournament. And I watched the Women's Fatal 4-Way. And then I watched, I wanted to watch Ricky Starks versus Powerhouse Hobbs because I really loved those 2, especially when they were a tag team. But it got spoiled to me that it was basically like a squash match, so I didn't bother tuning in for that.
Dang.
I didn't bother tuning in for House of Black versus Darby Allin, Sting, and Miro because of seeing what happened in the Fallout, and what's still kind of going on with very little sort of details coming out. Obviously, the only thing I just know is that I want whatever's best for Malachi Black's health, and especially mental health, whatever's going on with him. You and me both. Yeah. And then I watched the casino ladder match, but as soon as the finish started happening, since I saw it all over social media, I tuned out. I wanted to watch what led up to the finish. And then the part that I was most excited for, especially because seeing people say that it really reignited the crowd in a sense. The tag title match between champions Swerve and Our Glory versus The Acclaimed. Hey, the last time you and I talked, the Young Bucks were champions, and now, we're here. Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland are the tag champions as they go against the very hot Acclaimed.
Goodness, how did that match go?
I thoroughly loved the match. Again, it was like a lot of the matches we saw this weekend where I was like, this is a bit slow to start, but they really ramped it up. And towards the end of the match, Swerve really started playing up the heel tactics. And, they were... the thing I loved the most, they brought up during the build-up, Swerve brought up that, like, Anthony Bowens has many times derailed this tag team's momentum by getting injured. And next thing you know in the match, his knee starts going out, and so Swerve really starts targeting that knee to the point where, at many times you're like, oh, that knee's going to come back to bite him. It's going to be the reason this team doesn't win. And it ends up being just that gets Swerve and Our Glory the win.
Wow. I heard about the finish. Didn't know sort of what built up to it. But I was, like many, disappointed that the Acclaim didn't win because they're so over.
Yeah, they're so over. You want to talk about the fallout? I think it was a bit awkward to ask Tony Khan with the champions right next to him, hey, should you have called an audible and have the Acclaimed win? When the entire time they've been kind of doing that press conference in character, except of course what happened beforehand. But when it came to Keith Lee and Swerve, they were kind of being in character, and then to ask them right there in their face, hey, should an audible have been called for you guys to lose your titles to them? You know?
Dang.
But
goodness gracious.
You know me. I'm a big Keith Lee fan. I'm a big Swerve fan. I was very happy to see them win the tag titles. I was watching that Dynamite with my dad, and we were both happy to see it. Very surprised to see it. Came out of left field for us. And I'm just going to throw this out there because I know, or I don't know how hot of a take it is, but because I know how much the internet loves their different tag teams like FTR and the Young Bucks. Me personally, my tag team of the year is Swerve in Our Glory because of just the matches they've had.
Whoa!
They had the triple threat against Jungle Express? I think it's Jungle Express, and Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks at Double or Nothing. They had the pre-show tag match on Forbidden Door against Kanemaru and was it Desperado? I believe, yeah. Desperado that both of us really enjoyed. They had that tag match on Dynamite. They have the match here with the Acclaimed, and as announced on Dynamite today, they have a rematch with the Acclaimed at Arthur Ashe.
Goodness gracious. I heard it was Arthur Ass in honor of Billy Gunn's participation in the Acclaim. What a take indeed, sir. I think if I look back at the year of tag team wrestling, I might want to give that to that title to maybe like the Usos. They had a pretty good year too.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the titles. And I'm going to join you down the hot take lane and say that I know a lot of people want me to find FTR to be like God's gift of tag team, but I still haven't seen that match to blow me away. Which one's the one that always is getting hurt? Dax?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying. Just because they have all the belts, don't mean... Hey, I think it's because they have the New Japan belt that they won't put them in that video game. I think it's not until they lose them belts that they can officially be put in that video game where they're going to make money off of it.
Yeah, I think, obviously it's not up to them, but I just kind of find it a bit disappointing that they have 3 tag titles, and I rarely see them ever defend any of them.
Come on, am I right? Stop it!
And I think the part that definitely annoyed me the most was this entire time they've talked about being a tag team. They're like, oh yeah, we're never, not one of us is going to break out and be the Shawn Michaels, and one of us is going to be the Marty Jannetty, where they, as they described it, we're each other's shadow in a sense. We're one and the same. We're never going to overshadow one another, but yet Dax is the one that's getting more attention this year than the other member, Cash, it's like you see Dax getting more singles matches.
Yeah. He's definitely had a lot of career defining singles matches this year.
Yeah,
for sure. But goodness, if you guys want to be the Rock and Roll Express, they can go ahead and be this generation's Rock and Roll Express. Jack, can you name the 2 members of the Rock and Roll Express?
I cannot. Sorry, that is before my era.
Robert Gibson and the one that still wrestles.
Ricky Morton? Yeah, Ricky Morton. Yeah. I know Ricky Morton.
Yeah, that's the life they want. They want to be 2 names that our kids aren't going to be able to remember.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just really enjoyed that match. I especially loved how they recognized, they couldn't call the full audible, but Swerve and Lee still found a way to switch up their dynamic and be like, all right, well, let's start leaning into the heel side of it because we know we're not going to get this crowd to cheer for us because they love the Acclaim so much.
So get this, Jack. So a lot happened after the show that you and I have to get into. I have to hear your take on the fallout from All Out. And a guy on YouTube that I was listening to on my way home today was like, we got to hear from Tony Khan, we got to hear from MJF, and we got to hear from the Acclaimed. He literally named those 3 people because he knows the Acclaimed don't hold anything back. Acclaimed are going to tell you in a funny, cheeky way what's happening, right? What happened tonight, Jack? Did you see it?
I did, and it just adds even more to this story. The Acclaimed music hits, the crowd goes wild, they're ready.
Yo!
Yeah. Yeah, Max Caster goes, yo, listen. And then right as he's about to say the first line, all you hear is Swerve's music hit, and he interrupts them.
Dang.
And that Buffalo crowd let him have it. They were booing him. They were calling him all sorts of profanity for interrupting the Acclaimed.
The YouTuber I was watching was waited with bated breath for the rap. And as soon as Swerve interrupts, he lets out a yell that is sincere because of how gross it sounded. But he goes, he's so mad, and he reacts so sincerely, and he's like, it was so good.
Yeah, and I think the part I love the most is that they're sort of going back to teasing the breakup of Swerve and Lee.
Really?
By the fact that Swerve came out on his own, and he's sort of acting all heelish, while Keith Lee was a bit more respectful to the Acclaimed.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah. And I like this better than when they were previously, booking their, were they going to break up? Because that one just kind of seemed like, oh, well, they're eventually going to break up because they're both supposed to be singles guys. Whereas this one, it's like, there's now, layers behind it.
It was definitely uninspired because it was definitely leaning on that old, tired, a heel bumped into me and I bumped into you. And you think it was me bumping into you. No, you don't understand. Because you don't rewatch our matches or something.
Yeah.
This seems a lot more, I don't know, thought out.
Yeah. And there's only about 3 minutes and 30 seconds left, so let's just quickly real talk. AEW Dynamite comes on and the announcement comes through. Trios titles are vacated despite being newly crowned on Sunday. And the AEW World Championship is vacated, all because of that dreaded press conference that happened after All Out.
Jack, do you think they keep doing press conferences after this weekend?
I don't think so. I don't know how you could.
How could you? Jack, they were stupid to begin with.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, but they let that press conference go out, and I think the thing that was just I can say this confidently because more has come out and more sort of views have come out. CM Punk walks out there. He sees a guy who he knows interacted with Colt Cabana in the past, and that's what sets him off. No one brings up Colt Cabana. He just notices some guy who knows him and starts to go off on a tirade. He goes off on Colt Cabana. He goes off on the Elite. He goes off on Hangman Page and all this, and you're just like, what the heck is going on?
And for a guy who repeatedly said, I don't care about him or what he does or where he works, I feel like he does care. Yeah, that was a tone and that was definitely a tone and word choice that does not belong to a man who doesn't care.
Yeah, and I think the part that he truly lost a lot of people is him bringing Colt Cabana's mom into it.
Oh,
what are you bringing someone's mother into it? Your beef is with him, not his mother.
But step back. Why are we having a press conference where the guy he just wrestled, he's heated, he's bloody? You know what I mean? He should have never had this platform.
Yeah. And the thing that was also upsetting to me was that, obviously people might look at it as biased that I'm choosing one side over the other, but let it be known this entire time I've been wearing a CM Punk shirt, but I still think it's kind of bogus that he calls out Hangman Adam Page, and apparently his beef is with the fact that there was a quote in an interview where Hangman said he doesn't take advice from the older people, but if you watch the full interview, which a lot of people don't do, they like to take little bits and pieces and get a headline out of it. Hangman said he doesn't listen to the advice of older people because he'd rather be the type of guy who learns from his mistakes. He doesn't say that he doesn't outright take their advice. He just wants to learn on his own, essentially like a hands-on learner. He wants to make the mistakes and improve from it.
Love to hear that. Jack, how much time we got?
50 seconds.
Jack, if you want to keep talking, I'm happy to record episode 4 of What the Heck is Happening in AEW.
With about 35 seconds left, I say, let's just go through with it, because I feel like the audience wants to know what we think.
Let's go. We'll see you there. One more for the road.
One more for the road. Although I can't promise it'll be a full episode, because, It's about to be 9 o'clock. I don't want to keep Mr. Solis for too long, but for however long we go, we're going to give you guys our opinion on it because that's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah.